In the early hours of February 3, 2026, London awoke to a revelation that few could have anticipated. Buckingham Palace, in a statement both precise and unusually discreet, confirmed what insiders had long whispered. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, had been named the sole beneficiary of one of the monarchy's most secretive private estates, the Cedar Estate. The announcement, delivered through official channels at 11:58 p.m. GMT, stunned historians, royal correspondents, and political analysts alike. The estate had been managed in absolute secrecy for decades, its existence largely unknown to the public, tucked away in the Chiltern Hills between Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire. Unlike Sandringham or Balmoral, the Cedar Estate was not a ceremonial residence. It was a fortified sanctuary, a repository of history, memory, and influence, and its passing to William was no ordinary inheritance. Before we move further, I need to be honest with you. My heart sank when I saw that over 90% of you watch my royal family videos but haven't subscribed yet. Please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and helps me keep bringing you the latest updates, secrets, and shocking moments from the world of royalty. And while you're here, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this royal story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and can't wait to see how you react to these unbelievable royal moments. Purchased in 1944 by King George VI, the estate had been conceived as a wartime refuge, complete with underground bunkers, passageways, and centuries-old cedar groves forming a natural barrier. The central mansion, a Jacobean revivalist masterpiece, was surrounded by working farms, a glacial-fed lake, and a 12th-century chapel never opened to the public. Inside, archival vaults contained hundreds of oak chests filled with personal correspondence, confidential royal communications, and previously unseen portraits of King George VI and Princess Margaret. 14 sealed audio recordings of Queen Elizabeth II's private conversations with Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela, Ronald Reagan, and Charles de Gaulle rested in a climate-controlled vault, a testament to the quiet, deliberate accumulation of history. It was not merely a house. It was a vault of the monarchy's soul. Royal insiders noted that William had spent countless weekends at Cedar Estate between 2017 and 2021, walking the cedar groves with his grandmother, reviewing war correspondence, and assisting in restoration. He had quietly absorbed the legacy entrusted to him. A handwritten note in the Covenant Trust executed by Queen Elizabeth II in 2020 read, "He will inherit more than the crown. He will inherit the silence that preserved it." These were not ceremonial duties. They were a transfer of stewardship, responsibility, and moral authority. William was the only senior royal consulted during the Queen's late-life reforms, the overhaul of education, institutional transparency, and archival modernization. His engagement was hands-on, meticulous, and profoundly intentional. Northanger Hall, a 1,200-acre estate in Wiltshire, was similarly reassigned through a sealed codicil. Formerly a lesser-known royal retreat, it had hosted diplomatic gatherings and sensitive family events. It now stood under William's exclusive stewardship, preserved entirely outside the Crown Estate or Duchy of Cornwall, governed by private legal mechanisms established by the late Queen. Its heritage, agricultural potential, and strategic significance were considerable, yet the estate's symbolic weight outweighed its material value. The Queen's foresight had been absolute. By bypassing the usual channels, she ensured her grandson would inherit not just property, but the ethical and dynastic compass she deemed essential. The public was slow to react. For most, the names Cedar Estate and Northanger Hall meant little. For insiders, however, the implications were profound. The transfer represented a deliberate consolidation of historical memory, strategic property, and familial responsibility. Archival documents suggested that William personally cataloged naval dispatches, restored archival chambers, and engaged in conservation projects, reinforcing his status as an heir not merely to power but to stewardship. Courtiers described his efforts as quiet, methodical, and deeply respectful of history. He was learning to wield influence through preservation, patience, and principle. By morning, the palace buzzed with measured discussion. Political commentators debated the estate's strategic significance. Historians noted the rarity of such private transfers, unbound by parliamentary scrutiny. Within the palace, whispers of approval and quiet tension mingled. Among the family, reactions were complex. While the Duke of Cornwall maintained a dignified neutrality, some members eyed the consolidation of power with concern. Queen Camilla's ambitions, long rumored, would soon collide with the uncompromising directives of the late queen. But for William, the moment was defined by clarity. The estates were not prizes. They were obligations, sacred trust, and the final chess move of a monarch who had anticipated every eventuality. As William walked the grounds of Cedar Estate later that morning, accompanied only by a trusted aide, the frost glistened on the cedars. The air was crisp, the landscape silent but weighty with history. Each step along the paths carved by generations of royals carried with it the echoes of responsibility. Here, amidst the groves, the hidden chapels, and the glacial lakes, William understood the essence of inheritance. It was not wealth, not privilege, nor public acclaim. It was stewardship. It was moral vigilance. It was patience. And above all, it was the unwavering protection of a legacy entrusted to him by the one person whose foresight he could never doubt, Queen Elizabeth II. In the hushed corridors of the mansion, in the vaults where history slept, and across the silent groves, the monarchy's soul had found its guardian. And in that quiet, the true weight of responsibility settled upon William's shoulders, immutable, unshakable, and profoundly human. By February 4th, 2026, the quiet dominance of Cedar Estate and Northanger Hall in William's hands had already set wheels turning behind the palace doors. Camilla, Queen Consort, and her son, Tom Parker Bowles, were quick to interpret the transfers not as acts of stewardship, but as missed opportunities. To them, the estates represented untapped potential, a combination of history, prestige, and commercial promise that could be molded into symbols of modern royal enterprise. Their vision was one of transformation: boutique hotels, high-end culinary ventures, eco-conscious retreats, and curated heritage tourism. But William had inherited more than land. He had inherited a covenant, one that explicitly bound the estates to preservation, ethical management, and the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. Camilla's approach was calculated. Within weeks, she convened private strategists, estate lawyers, and financial consultants, plotting to secure influence over Northanger Hall through subtle legal maneuvering. Memos indicate she envisioned Green Britain Retreats, a luxury brand blending ecologes, artisanal cuisine, and royal patronage. Tom, fueled by ambition, was eager to capitalize. He proposed a Michelin-grade tasting restaurant within the old hunting lodge, seasonal Highland wines produced on estate lands, and farm-to-table experiences branded as Royal Wild, leveraging cedar honey, estate trout, and specialty cheeses. Their plan extended beyond culinary ambitions. They targeted art installations, private concert series, and members-only historical tour. In their view, the royal family's history could be commoditized, sold, and leveraged, a perspective sharply at odds with Elizabeth's vision. William, however, maintained a disciplined calm. He absorbed the scheming reports with measured attention, refusing to be baited into public confrontation. While Camilla and Tom mobilized legal teams, William consulted with Princess Anne, the Lord Chamberlain, and trusted advisors. Every memo, every preliminary blueprint was cross-referenced against the sealed codicil, the private annotations, and the covenant terms embedded in the Queen's final will. The estates were not just property, they were moral inheritance. William's strategy was simple yet profound: patience, preparation, and principled action. Any misstep could provoke public scandal, invite media intrusion, or embolden Camilla's legal maneuvers. Tensions escalated in the final week of January 2026. Camilla's aides circulated draft proposals to potential investors, referencing Northanger Hall as a heritage luxury destination awaiting royal endorsement. Documents leaked to palace staff suggested that Tom had quietly registered Stag Crown Hospitality Limited in Luxembourg, anticipating a launch that would coincide with the public revelation of the estate's transfer. Within the palace, the atmosphere thickened. Courtiers described long hours of quiet debate, hushed meetings in drawing rooms, and confidential consultations with legal advisors specializing in royal trusts. Every proposed action by Camilla and Tom was countered by anticipatory analysis, clauses, covenants, and the preemptive authority embedded in the late Queen's directives. Elizabeth's foresight was meticulous. She had foreseen the ambitions of those who might challenge William's stewardship. On January 30th, the transfer of Green Heath and Northanger Hall was finalized under the supervision of Princess Anne, who acted on behalf of the Crown Trust Authority. Private records indicate that all commercial ambitions, branding plans, and licensing attempts by Camilla or Tom were nullified. Legal experts reviewed the codicil, noting the explicit clause prohibiting any material transformation of the estates without William's approval. It was a clear rebuke. The estates were to remain sanctuaries, not commodities. Camilla's reaction, though muted in public, was reportedly explosive behind closed doors. Palace aides recall a private luncheon where she slammed the table, accusing William of disregarding the family opportunity. Yet he responded with composed silence, conveying a quiet but unwavering determination. The ethical clash extended beyond property. For William, the estates symbolized restraint, legacy, and moral stewardship. Every grove, chapel, and hidden path was a living repository of the monarchy's memory. For Camilla and Tom, opportunity, branding, and influence were paramount. The struggle was not merely material. It was philosophical, testing the very principles upon which the modern monarchy rested. Advisors note that this confrontation was a turning point, demonstrating that legacy requires guardianship as much as inheritance. William's strategy relied on discretion, patience, and measured action. No public statement was made. No media engagement occurred. Instead, every legal avenue, every administrative tool, and every historical precedent was meticulously employed to uphold Elizabeth's wishes. By early February, William and Catherine had begun personal oversight of the estates. They walked the groves with George, Charlotte, and Louis, explaining the significance of each landmark: the centuries-old chapel, the restored archival chambers, and the frost-covered lakes. It was both lesson and affirmation. Camilla's ambitions remained, simmering just beneath the surface, but William's ethical stance and the Queen's codicil left little room for compromise. Historical precedent, legal authority, and moral clarity aligned to support his vision. Within the palace, whispers circulated of Camilla's frustrated counsel and Tom's aborted branding schemes. Yet William remained serene, embodying the quiet authority Elizabeth had entrusted to him. As dusk settled over Northanger Hall and Cedar Estate, the frost-touched branches glistened, reflecting an inheritance far greater than land. Here, stewardship met legacy. Here, ethics confronted ambition. William understood that the estates were not simply places, they were testaments, instruments, and obligations. Each decision, each footstep, carried weight beyond the material, a responsibility to protect memory, morality, and history. The palace, the public, and even ambitious family members watched silently as the battle for legacy played out, not in headlines, but in law, principle, and enduring resolve. By mid-February, the ethical clash had reached equilibrium. Camilla's schemes were neutralized, Tom's ventures dissolved, and William's stewardship, guided by foresight, restraint, and quiet strength, had emerged unshakable. By mid-February 2026, news of William's exclusive stewardship of Northanger Hall, Cedar Estate, and Green Heath had begun seeping into public awareness. Though palace officials maintained careful discretion, the first reports emerged through niche royal commentators, historical blogs, and a handful of investigative journalists. The narrative immediately captivated the nation. A prince entrusted not only with crowns and ceremonial estates, but with secret holdings carefully preserved for ethical and dynastic continuity. Media coverage was initially cautious. Headlines emphasized responsibility over spectacle. Prince William assumed stewardship of private estates, Elizabeth II's final covenant honored by grandson, and legacy preserved, not branded. Public reaction was measured but intensely engaged. Social media feeds buzzed with speculation about the estates, history, their hidden treasures, and the unprecedented nature of their transfers. Television networks devoted segments to historians and legal experts, analyzing the implications. Commentators highlighted that while Sandringham and Balmoral were widely known, the estates William now controlled had never been catalogued in public registries, making their existence virtually invisible for decades. Panel discussions ranged from constitutional experts to conservationists, all praising Elizabeth's foresight and William's measured response. Social media amplified the coverage. Hashtags like Royal Legacy, Northanger Hall and William's stewardship trended across platforms, drawing attention from younger audiences previously disengaged from traditional royal discourse. Memes and analytical threads explored the ethical clash between stewardship and ambition, often juxtaposing William's calm decisiveness with Camilla and Tom's thwarted attempts at commercialization. Amid the public interest, media access to the estates remained tightly controlled. Only authorized images, carefully composed to emphasize natural beauty, historical architecture, and family presence, were released. Photographs of William walking alongside George, Charlotte, and Louis through frost-kissed groves illustrated a narrative of continuity and care. Journalists reported a serene but deliberate presence, William interacting with estate managers, reviewing historical records, and guiding his children along carefully restored pathways. His actions, captured in subdued imagery, reinforced the symbolism of ethical stewardship and respect for history, contrasting sharply with prior commercial ambitions by Camilla and Tom. Public perception of William strengthened. Polling data suggested that citizens viewed him as principled, patient, and protective of heritage, while commentary surrounding Camilla's schemes often framed her pursuits as opportunistic, regardless of her status. Internally, William himself began to grasp the full weight of his inheritance. Walking the length of Cedar Estate's hidden glades or standing at the edge of Green Heath's frosted lake, he recognized that the estates represented far more than private property. They were repositories of memory, moral precedent, and dynastic responsibility. Each chapel, archival vault, and forested grove contained tangible connections to the monarchy's decisions, sacrifices, and private lives, preserved in trust and covenant. The weight of this awareness was immense. It became clear that every decision regarding land use, restoration, or public engagement carried implications beyond finance or aesthetics. It was a test of ethical fidelity to Elizabeth's vision and an affirmation of the monarchy's continuity. William's reflections deepened as he engaged with archivists, historians, and estate managers. Confidential inventories revealed artifacts previously unknown to the public, sealed war correspondences, private recordings of Elizabeth in dialogue with global leaders, and centuries-old journals meticulously catalogued. He understood that his stewardship demanded both discretion and active preservation. This realization reframed his role not as a passive inheritor, but as an active guardian of historical, moral, and ethical legacies. Each policy decision, from forest management to public engagement strategies, was filtered through this lens, ensuring the estates remained sanctuaries rather than commodities. The media, sensing the contrast between ambition and responsibility, crafted narratives that elevated William's symbolic stature. Features explored his hands-on approach, cataloging naval dispatches, inspecting restoration efforts, and personally reviewing historical correspondence. Analysts noted that unlike conventional heirs, William engaged with the estates as living instruments of legacy, not merely ceremonial markers of privilege. Public fascination surged when a documentary-style segment revealed rare insights into Northanger Hall's history. Underground passageways, centuries-old chapels, and archival vaults filled with portraits, letters, and personal mementos of the royal line. Viewership spiked, and debates ensued about the ethical dimensions of inheritance, stewardship, and the monarchy's moral responsibility. Despite the public spotlight, Camilla and Tom's efforts to influence opinion were muted. Their commercial branding schemes, once poised to dominate media narratives, were effectively nullified by Elizabeth's codicil and William's disciplined approach. Attempts to counteract coverage through leaks or press-friendly events were met with legal and institutional resistance, reinforcing William's control. Within the palace, staffers remarked on the contrast. While Camilla's campaigns relied on attention and persuasion, William's approach demanded patience, foresight, and principled action. The quiet dignity of his method resonated with both historians and the public, creating a perception of legitimacy that extended beyond mere inheritance. By the end of February, the symbolic weight of the estates had crystallized. William understood that his responsibility was twofold: protect the physical lands and artifacts, and uphold a standard of ethical governance that would influence public perception of the monarchy for generations. His actions became a blueprint for principled stewardship, illustrating how foresight, patience, and respect for historical and moral legacies could counter commercial ambition. The nation watched as a young prince navigated a labyrinth of legal, ethical, and familial challenges, emerging not just as an heir, but as a guardian of continuity, embodying the foresight and wisdom entrusted to him by Queen Elizabeth II. Each step through the frost-kissed groves and hidden chapels reaffirmed an enduring truth. Legacy is not inherited. It is preserved, honored, and lived. By early March 2026, the final phase of William's stewardship had begun. With Northanger Hall, Cedar Estate, Greenheath, and Oakage fully under his control, the Prince of Wales moved deliberately to consolidate management, reinforce security, and implement the ethical framework set forth by Queen Elizabeth II. The estates, once shadowed by secrecy and familial tension, were now unified under a single vision: preservation, education, and moral stewardship. William's approach was meticulous. He appointed trusted managers from his Sandhurst connections, historians with expertise in archival conservation, and environmental specialists to oversee woodland and agricultural lands. Unlike commercial ventures, profit was secondary to purpose. Each decision, from restoring 12th-century chapels to cataloging centuries-old correspondences, was weighed against the Queen's codicils, reflecting her emphasis on foresight, restraint, and continuity. Public engagement remained carefully controlled. William authorized occasional guided tour of select groves and chapels, designed to highlight the estate's historical significance while maintaining the sanctity of private archives. Media access was permitted only under strict conditions, ensuring coverage emphasized educational value and ethical stewardship rather than spectacle. The contrast between William's measured transparency and Camilla and Tom's prior commercial ambitions became a recurring theme in public discourse. Historians, legal experts, and cultural commentators praised the prince for transforming inheritance into active guardianship. Polls indicated rising public admiration, framing William as a modern heir who balanced tradition with ethical responsibility. Social media amplified this narrative, with William's stewardship and royal legacy trending consistently as images of frost-kissed pathways, restored chapels, and carefully curated archival rooms circulated online. The consolidation process revealed the full symbolic weight of the estates. Northanger Hall's underground archival vaults, Cedar Estate's secret wartime bunkers, Greenheath's protected woodland, and Oakage's historic ruins collectively embodied decades of royal foresight. William understood that these properties were not mere residences or commercial assets. They were repositories of memory, moral precedent, and dynastic continuity. Each artifact, from sealed correspondence to oil portraits, reinforced the monarchy's enduring responsibility. William personally reviewed inventories, cross-referencing historical records and ensuring the preservation of delicate manuscripts. The process demanded patience, precision, and humility, yet he approached it with a resolute commitment to the Queen's vision, aware that his actions would define how the monarchy was remembered for generations. Internally, Camilla and Tom's ambitions were effectively neutralized. Their prior attempts to commercialize or rebrand the estates had been thwarted by Elizabeth's foresight and William's disciplined oversight. Legal counsel confirmed that the codicils and covenant trusts provided irreversible protection against unauthorized exploitation. Attempts to lobby advisors or influence staff were quietly countered by William's security and governance protocols. Privately, Camilla expressed frustration and disappointment, but no further public challenge emerged. Observers within the palace noted a shift in the balance of influence. William, guided by principle and respect for legacy, had asserted control, while opportunistic ambition, once vocal and persistent, had been rendered powerless. The educational and environmental initiatives flourished under William's stewardship. Cedar Estate hosted limited historical workshops for young scholars. Greenheath became a model for sustainable woodland conservation, and Oakage's archives were digitized for secure research access by historians and universities. The approach demonstrated that ethical inheritance could coexist with public benefit. William's children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, were gradually introduced to the responsibilities of stewardship, learning firsthand about preservation, moral judgment, and the weight of dynastic trust. These moments, shared in carefully curated public images, reinforced the narrative of continuity and responsibility, illustrating that legacy was measured not in wealth or privilege, but in integrity and action. By late March, William reflected on the magnitude of his achievement. Walking along the frozen lake at Green Heath, he observed the interplay of frost, shadow, and history, recognizing that the estates were more than land or buildings. They were living embodiments of ethical foresight. He understood that protecting these holdings was not a momentary victory but a lifelong commitment, one that required vigilance, wisdom, and courage. The crown, ceremonial and public, would endure, but these private estates represented the moral compass of the monarchy, preserved beyond political intrigue and temporal ambition. William's stewardship thus became a model of principled governance, demonstrating how foresight, patience, and ethical commitment could safeguard history and inspire future generations. The final public gesture came in early April, when William, accompanied by Catherine and their children, opened a limited section of Oakage for a heritage and educational symposium. The event, covered by select media, emphasized the estate's cultural and historical value, presenting William as a guardian rather than a proprietor. Speeches by historians and conservationists highlighted Elizabeth II's foresight and the prince's ethical execution of her vision. Media outlets contrasted his careful stewardship with prior commercial ambitions by Camilla and Tom, reinforcing the moral narrative of principled guardianship. Social media amplified the event as a defining moment in William's early tenure as Prince of Wales, cementing public perception of integrity, foresight, and responsible legacy. In the quiet that followed, the estate stood secure. Frosted groves, restored chapels, and archival vaults remained under William's vigilant care, untouched by commercial schemes or opportunistic interference. The monarchy, often criticized for opacity or indulgence, was here defined by stewardship, principle, and continuity. For William, the lesson was clear. True legacy is not inherited but actively preserved, nurtured, and protected. As he walked with his children through Oakage's ancient stone paths, he imparted the final enduring truth. Stewardship is measured not in power, wealth, or privilege, but in integrity, foresight, and unwavering commitment. Elizabeth's trust had been honored, her legacy secured, and with that, the estates, silent, resilient, and timeless, stood as a testament to principled guardianship, an enduring monument to foresight, responsibility, and the moral heart of monarchy.